Are the reprints in Super Slam actually good? Hello and welcome to the table, and today I'm back with another Flesh and Blood video, this time talking about the reprints in Super Slam and some of the issues that I have with them. But to start things off, I'm going to talk about the things that I do like about these reprints, and I'll get into the critiques afterwards. And the first thing that we need to talk about is Flick Knives. This is an incredible reprint. This card, the second Hunted came out, is like, okay, this card's never going to be cheap again. This needs to get reprinted right this second. And the fact that it got reprinted is a very, very good thing. And I really do like that it got reprinted. It's a great card. It's a very powerful card. And it's good in every assassin ever. Which is awesome because that class needs to be more expensive than it already is. And, you know, Syndra's a pretty good deck too. You know, Syndra likes Flick Knives quite a bit from what I've been told. It might be one of the most important cards in the deck. So, you know. But yeah, Flick Knives, incredible card, and I love to see it getting reprinted here. But moving past Flick Knives, I have New Horizon. This legendary piece of equipment, this one kind of surprised me. Now, granted, this card is very expensive. It's like $140. That's something that, like, you know, this card needs reprinting if it's $100+ That's quite a bit of cash. Now, granted, you only need one copy of it, but $140 is $140. So yes, this card did need to get reprinted. But of all of the most important legendary pieces of equipment out there that need to get reprintings, I don't think New Horizon was at the top of that list. Now, granted, again, this card needed a reprinting for sure because it only got printed once in Tales of Aria, never again. So yeah, needed to get a reprinting, but I'll get more into why I don't think it's the best reprint in the critique portion of the video. But then, I have two of probably the best reprints in the entire set. Now, granted, I do love that Flick Knives got reprinted, but I think these two reprints are even better. Felling of the Crown and Plow Under. Now, when Florian came out, and I still believe that this is true, decompose, you know, most important part of Florian. And you only had so many ways to do it. And, you know, you need a decent amount of ways to decompose in order for Florian to do the Florian things and do really dumb BS. And, you know, Felling of the Crown, Plow Under were the two cards that, you know, got the deck to the point where it had enough decompose to reliably get that Florian ability to be online in a majority of the games that you would play. And on top of that, they were really busted cards. I mean, look at Plow Under. You just get to do stupid crap with the opponent's, you know, arsenal. I don't know why my brain just decided to die there, but, you know, you get to do stupid things with the opponent's arsenal, make them get rid of their arsenal, or, Felling of the Crown, you know, get rid of something from their hand. That's pretty good, too. That's pretty stupid. But yeah, Felling of the Crown, Plow Under, two very powerful cards, both of which, you know, Felling of the Crown is $50, Plow Under is $30. You need 3 copies of each of these. Put those together, it makes Florian a little bit pricey. And the fact that both of these cards got reprinted is very good for Florian because, you know, Florian is a pretty freaking good deck. It's a pretty freaking fun deck. And having this kind of price barrier to make the deck, you know, from decent to way the heck broken kind of stinks. But yeah, Felling of the Crown, Plow Under, glad to see those cards getting a reprinting here. But then, 2 other reprints in this set, one of which also semi-surprised me, but at the same time didn't, because, you know, assassins are assassins, but that is Snag. Snag here, assassins are one of, if not the most broken class in the entire game, and Snag is kind of the sideboard MVP against assassins, because, you know, attack reactions are kind of their thing, and Snag here says no. Plus, it's a blue, so you can pitch it, get quite a bit of resources out of it too, worst case scenario. So Snag it's an all-around pretty good card, and it's 20 bucks. And pretty much every deck, or at least every deck that, suffers against Assassins, which are only a little bit good in the meta right now, want this in the sideboard. So the fact that this got reprinted wasn't at the top of my list by any means, but then seeing it, it was like, okay, yeah, this needed to get reprinted. So glad to see it here. But then lastly, there's Warmonger's Diplomacy, a card that 1000% needed a reprinting, but it's a $50 card, around the same price range as Felling of the Crown. And granted, Felling of the Crown only is played in Florian, whereas Warmonger's Diplomacy is played in a lot more decks than Florian. And Warmonger's Diplomacy isn't really played in Florian anyways, at least I don't think it is. But Warmonger's Diplomacy played in quite a few decks, and it's $50, around the same price range as, Felling of the Crown. But it's a legendary in the expansion slot instead of a majestic. So it makes it a little bit harder to pull, which is kind of unfortunate, and I'll get a little bit more into why I don't really like that in the critique portion. But Warmonger's Diplomacy, this card, the second that it came out, slowly started oh, this card's pretty good. It's pretty good. Oh, this card's insane. Yeah, this card's $100. Okay, it's going to go down a little bit because, Runeblade's got a little bit worse. Yeah, this card's still pretty good, though. So it's like $50 for a copy. You need, like 3 copies of it in a majority of sideboards ever. So Warmonger's Diplomacy, yeah, it's a good card. Need a reprinting. Glad to see it getting a reprinting here. But getting to the critiques portion of the video. First off, in my opinion, all of these reprints are good reprints. I'm glad that all of these cards got reprinted, but I feel like some cards need to be reprinted a little bit, needed a reprinting more than some of the cards that got a reprinting here. Now, when it was announced that there was going to be a larger expansion slot than normal in Super Slam, I was like, okay, the however many cards that are going to be dedicated to the new stuff in every expansion slot, keep those the normal new cards. But then all of the added cards on top of that, make those all reprints. And it feels like a lot of those additional slots added to the expansion slot just got dedicated to more new cards, which I don't think really needed to happen because, you got cards like Golden Gallia, Heartplate, Gauntlets, and Gate. Now, for Olympia players, good cards. But would the Olympia player and all the players in Flesh and Blood rather have these 4 cards in the expansion slot take up a Majestic slot that could instead be a Felling of the Crown, or would they like 4 reprints in those slots instead? So it's just I feel like some more of the slots should have been dedicated to reprints, which is unfortunate because, the reprints that we got are good. But, in my opinion, New Horizon should not have gotten reprinted over something like Final Spring Tunic. Because with New Horizon, it can only be played in Rangers. Really good card. $140. Needed to get a reprinting, don't get me wrong. But Tunic is around the same price. And it can be played in any deck in the entirety of the game. So New Horizon, I love ya. I do love Rangers. And I do love this card. But, it did not need to get reprinted over something like a Tunic or another legendary piece of equipment. And it's just I like it. I like that it got reprinted. But it's just with the few slots dedicated to reprints in this set, considering that the expansion slot is quite a bit larger than normal, even though there aren't that many more reprints in the expansion slot than normal, it makes this kind of a feels bad because, good card. Not the number 1 legendary, though, that needed to get reprinted outside of something like a Flick Knives. So that kind of stinks. But on top of that, then we got the whole Warmonger's Diplomacy thing. Now, with this card, I love that this got reprinted. I totally think this card needed to get reprinted. But my issue with this being a legendary over something like a Command and Conquer and, Codex of Frailty in previous expansion slots for previous sets is that this card is a fair bit cheaper than those. And it's still really important, and it's still really good in just as many decks as those cards are in, but it's still a legendary in this expansion slot, which makes it quite a bit harder to pull than it's already going to be, because, you know, expansion slot cards can only be in so many of the slots, in so many of the packs, in a box, for example. And so you already have a pretty low chance of getting, you know, a lot of expansion slot cards. You're only going to get about 3 to a box. But now, on top of that, you have an even lower chance to get this card because it's a legendary, and then all of a sudden, it makes this card, you know, not that much more accessible, because it's still, you know, gonna have more printings of it out there in the market, but it's not going to necessarily drive the price of the card down that much. So I feel like this card, if it was $50 and Valiant of the Crown was $50, and this card, you know, is only played in so many decks, and this card is played in a lot more decks, in order to make it a little bit more accessible, I would rather it actually be a Majestic reprinting instead of a Legendary, to make it a little bit easier to pull. Maybe that's just me, but I don't know. And my biggest issue is just the fact that, like, there aren't enough cards being reprinted in this expansion slot, considering how much larger it is than the normal average expansion slot. I mean, it's just like, cards like Tunic, that I've already mentioned, need more reprints. There are some other cards that I, you know, just are kind of like unassuming, pretty, like, good generic staples. Like, I don't know, Enlightened Strike, E-Strike, or the card from Parthimus Vale that turns off colors that I can't remember the name of off the top of my head. That card needed a reprinting too. There are plenty of really busted generic staples that needed to get reprintings, and I was expecting to see at least a couple of them get reprintings in this set, and granted, some of those did get reprinted, like the Warmonger's Diplomacy, like the Snag, but there weren't other ones that got reprinted in slots that they should have, like Tunic versus New Horizon. I think Tunic should have been reprinted over New Horizon, considering how small this expansion slot reprinting section of it was, and it's just like, I feel like more slots should have been dedicated to reprints in this set. And I just feel like, in general, the reprint issue, like, to keep, I don't know. The problem right now with the prices of a lot of generic staples, whether they're generic cards or just generically good cards in a majority of decks, like in a lot of decks, like Flick Knives, like, where is it at? Codex of Frailty, New Horizon, plenty of cards, but not just generics. But I feel like with those cards, to get enough of those reprinted to where it's not insanely expensive to buy into, like, the top tier decks, or like it's like a big price. Basically, what I'm saying, and I can't say it, is that there needs to be a reprint set for Flesh and Blood. The expansion slots, you know, are really good ways to reprint cards, but they reprint cards too slowly, and they don't reprint enough cards. Because, you know, there are a lot of really expensive cards in Flesh and Blood. Don't get me wrong. I do like that for the collectability standpoint. But I feel like some of those cards should be a little bit cheaper, a little bit more accessible. And because of that, I feel like there should just be a dedicated reprint set for those staples. Because there just isn't enough of them out there for the high freaking demand for them. Because this is a very competitive game, and there's a high demand for the best top tier cards. So because of that, those cards are going to be a lot more expensive than normal in versus other games. So it's just like making them more accessible by reprinting more of them at a time in something like an actual dedicated reprint set instead of just the expansion slot. Maybe that's just me, but for all aside, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I know it might have been a little bit more controversial than a lot of Flesh and Blood videos I do, because I love this game and I love pretty much every aspect of this game. But the whole reprint and price side of things has been a pretty big issue lately, and I just wanted to kind of cover it a little bit more in this video. And I will be putting out a video soon talking about reprints and how I think reprints should be done, not just for Flesh and Blood, but for all trading card games in the industry. And if you want to see that video, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. It's Believe for Your Regrets, and you'll get to see that video when it comes up. Before all aside, hope that you all enjoy this video. Again, I know it was a little bit controversial, but I hope to see you all next time, and have a great rest of your day.